Hi everyone, and welcome to a new episode of ParaTalk. And on this episode of ParaTalk, I am joined by Luke of Shadow Paranormal. And this isn't his first time, this is his second time that he's been a guest. So I thought I'd get him back on. It's been a few years, and we're going to get a bit of an update and find out what he's been up to. And we'll go from there. Anyway, without further ado, let me bring Luke in, and we'll get this show on the road. Hi Luke, welcome back.
Hello, thanks for having me. Good to be back. Been a long time.
Yeah, it's been, I think it's about 3 years. I think you were one of the first guests I had on when ParaTalk version 2, when I started on my solo quest. So, it's been a while, and it's nice to have you back. So before we jump in and get into all the updates and what you've been doing, so I know you've been really busy, anyone that's listening that has no idea and not listened to our previous episode, give people a little bit of a background into who you are and what Shadow Paranormal is all about.
So yeah, we've been making videos on YouTube since 2012, so we've been going a fair while now. We're a paranormal investigation group primarily, but we also, as I say, make videos for YouTube. We've got sort of an online series on there where we do episodes, investigating a certain place in each episode. Bit on the history, bit on the background of the place, as well as sort of the ghosts and hauntings there as well, followed by actually investigating the location. I'd probably describe our investigation method as very, I'd say, sort of straightforward, common sense. We use a bit of equipment, but try and use that sparingly. And we just put ourselves in an environment and see if anything happens, which I think's a fairly level-headed way of doing it, especially when you look at people that have experienced a haunting or seen a ghost somewhere. A lot of them haven't been looking for it. So I always think if you just put yourself in an environment that's supposed to be haunted, you're in for a chance of seeing or experiencing something. Yeah,
I think sometimes it's good to just go with yourself and see what you experience. It's nice to have a few gadgets and gizmos, but yeah, going somewhere and just experiencing the place and the environment is sometimes, yourself is a good barometer of what might be going on there. But anyway, we'll put that to one side for now. I just want to concentrate a little bit on you and your team and your projects, because when I last spoke to you were very busy doing lots of different investigations, going to different places and creating content for, as you mentioned, creating content for YouTube, doing your little documentaries now and again when you were doing an investigation. So how have you been getting on with building up your repertoire of investigations, and how have you felt that, the evidence-wise, have you had any sort of eureka moments along the way?
Yeah, it's been really good. I'm really proud of what we've sort of managed to do over the last sort of 2 or 3 years. Probably got about another, 20 to 30 episodes out since we last spoke, which doesn't sound a lot over the course of 3 years, but as I'm sure you're aware as well of how much goes into making things. There's a lot of time and effort that goes into it. But yeah, no, we've been all over the country. So many different variety of locations we've been to. There have been a number of experiences we've had, certainly over the last few years, that have really puzzled us. And again, it's not always necessarily the really spooky kind of things that happen. A lot of the time, it's just odd, unexplainable things that get you scratching your head rather than anything particularly scary. But we've certainly had plenty of moments like that over the last few years.
When you've been out on these investigations, have you, anything that you've experienced, has it made you sort of stop and think, that is really weird? I mean, you have this kind of level of weirdness when you're investigating, and you have to sort of be hyper aware, but have you ever been in a situation and you've experienced something and thought, that's just bonkers?
Yeah, I mean, there was one not that long ago. There's a church in Suffolk we investigated. It's got a legend attached to it. Allegedly, if you walk around the church anti-clockwise 13 times, the devil will appear. And obviously, I think there's so many churches around the country that have got a similar kind of legend attached to it. And we assumed it was a bit of folklore, a legend, didn't think anything of it. But the church is supposed to be haunted, so we thought we'll spend an evening there and see if anything happens. And of course, we decided to walk around it 13 times. We had some equipment set up. We had EMF detector, magnetic field detector. I think we had some temperature gauge, air pressure sensor, a few different bits and pieces just set up on a gravestone, which is the one that the devil is supposed to emerge from. We thought, well, when we finish the 13 loops, we'll see if anything happens. And we set up the equipment on the gravestone. Like I say, we walked to the front of the church and said, well, we'll start here. Let's go round. So we went round 12 and a half times. As we walked past the equipment, all of a sudden started going off. And we thought, oh, that's a bit weird. Nearly on 13 times, walked to the front of the church. And then it was a moment it just struck us. We actually started the loop at the grave we set the equipment up at. I know we said to ourselves we'll start at the front, but we actually started walking around it where we set that equipment up. And it was exactly the 13th loop around it that equipment went off. We had a camera on it for the 10 minutes we were walking around the church, and it didn't go off once before then. And we stayed there another hour and a half. And again, none of the equipment went off. It was only when we walked 13 times around it.
When you go to a place, okay, and it's got a legend, or it's got somebody tells you a story, or it's got a bit of dark history, you're on your own, or you don't know who's going to be there. And that's like a lot of these places that are maybe open to the public, or they're not, it's not an enclosed place. Because I noticed that some of the venues you go to, they're kind of literally open to the wilderness. Then there's got to be in the back of your head, there's got to be a little bit of a worry of who's going to be there. Are we going to have to deal with, drunk kids, or just weird people, just not, you just want to be left alone and to do your thing. But when you have something like that happen, okay, and you're kind of like thinking, okay, I've heard of this legend, we've done this, and this has happened. Does it kind of like set you on a different level of, this is bizarre? Or do you start to, is that side of your head, that logical side of your head thinking, no, I need to find a reason for this? Or how do you deal with that?
The initial point of it is just thinking that's really bizarre, and there is that sort of rush of adrenaline when like I say, it finally dawns on you that something unusual has happened. The first thing we always do, and it's probably just because we've been doing it so long and it's just the way we work, is to try and work out what's happened and why it's happened. And sometimes we're able to get to the bottom of it quite easily. Something mundane as, I don't know, an animal making a noise somewhere, and it sounds like footsteps or something like that. Sometimes it can be very, very mundane, and we're able to work it out. Other times, it can be a little bit of digging around. Sometimes it's not, we actually work out what something is until we've reviewed the video footage, and it transpires that, I don't know, one of us, it was a shadow from one of us or something like that. So the initial thing is to try and work out what it is. And there are, at the end of the day, there is sometimes a pool of things that you can't find any explanation for, no matter how hard you try.
I always think when you're dealing with the unknown, it's always good to have a little bit of skepticism, and it's always good to double think what you're doing, and is there another reason that a thing happened or whatever. But you're quite correct. Sometimes things happen and there are no reasoning behind it. You can't think of a reason, and it's unexplained. Moving on slightly, I wanted to talk about an investigation you did at an abandoned hospital, which is from one of your recent videos, which was I think was it Nocton Hall?
Yeah, that was up in Lincolnshire.
Now, the thing is, right, I've had a few urbexers on the channel, and they've told me some stories when they've been out doing investigations, and they've experienced weird things when they've been in places like old care homes and places like that, where they've had experiences and they've not really sure what they've experienced. But obviously when you're an urbexer and you go to those places, you're always worried about, are you going to encounter someone that maybe you don't want to encounter? But yeah, I mean, that's just, whole thing of being out there and doing that kind of stuff. But what my question to you is, when you go to a place like that with a hospital where there's been a lot of people, there's been a lot of trauma, how did that investigation go? Did you have any evidence or have any experiences with that venue?
Yeah, I mean, that was a really surprising one. It's acres and acres there. I mean, we only had time to investigate a small portion of it. And it was because it is owned as a couple that actually own it. So I contacted them, and it was we actually got permission to go on there and investigate. I think they have a lot of trouble with people breaking on the site, damaging it, and things such as that. So, but if you contact them, you can have a tour of the site and investigate it as well. So I just wanted to say that, obviously, in case anyone thinks it is sort of abandoned and a site for urbexes. But yeah, it was a very bizarre place. It was because it wasn't some hospitals we've been to, and they've sort of got that Victorian look to them, whereas this was built in the 1940s. So it looked very much like a lot of modern hospitals, just to look at, with the corridors and the rooms and the wards. So already it was bizarre seeing somewhere that looks quite modern, but run down and dilapidated. The big thing we had there was EVP and disembodied voices. Some of them we heard at the time, some of them were just recorded onto camera. There were just the three of us and the lady giving us the tour that was actually there with us at the time. There was nobody else. And like I say, the site is acres and acres wide. They've got barbed wire perimeter, and I think they've got security cameras as well. So there's no one else that can get on there. But yeah, the amount of voices we heard was really weird. It seems to be quite a characteristic of that particular place. There was a few sightings of like shadowy figures walking about as well. Again, you go somewhere that's sort of dark and run down. Could it be your eyes playing tricks on you? Maybe. But we certainly saw a few things there as well that piqued our interest. But yeah, it was a very bizarre place. And I always think places that have just been left to the element, whether it's just in the human psyche to think that they're haunted because of how they look, or whether there is something to it, that a place that's just left and abandoned from human habitation, that energies sort of build up in there, or the less disturbed these energies are, the sort of more strength they get. I don't know, but it seems to be a theme with a lot of abandoned places having some kind of activity or haunting.
When you're at a venue and you're walking around with I think there's three of you in the team, isn't there?
There's three of us, yeah.
How do you communicate with each other? Do you have sort of I know this is a weird question, but I'm wondering, how do you kind of isolate yourselves from giving yourself false positives? Do you have a kind of a set routine that you do, or how does that work?
I mean, we've usually got two handheld cameras with us, so that's quite easy to isolate things, because you've got 2 points of view. If someone sees or hears something, you can watch the footage back and you'll know if the sound is louder on one of the cameras, it's more than likely been created by one of the people that was holding that camera or near that camera. So that's one way. The other thing is we've been doing this, the same three of us have been doing this for nearly 14 years. So we've sort of developed almost a psychic link of just knowing when to keep quiet. It's quite a difficult thing to explain, but I think it is just doing it with them for so long that we sort of don't need to have a code or anything. We know when to be quiet. We know as soon as there's any kind of activity occurring, be quiet, listen, watch, see if we can work out what's going on there. So it's just an unwritten thing that's happened with us over time. And so I think it is just a fact. It's been the same three of us doing it so long. And I think that's where a lot of people and groups possibly struggle, is that they haven't got that connection with the people they investigate with. And it's not something you can just sort of pair two people together and say, right, go off and investigate together, because it is a lot deeper than that, especially reading each other. It's quite a complicated thing. But it certainly helps, actually, when you're out there investigating, knowing almost what each of us are going to do at the time. It just keeps things easy and it flows nicely.
When you're with people that you know their mannerisms, and you don't need to say anything most of the times. You can usually do it via just looking at somebody or giving them a gesture, and they know what you mean. So it does help. And yeah, you are correct. When you're with individuals that you don't know and you don't know them personally, it can be difficult because it's hard to convey what you mean with just a look or a gesture or a hand signal. Leads me on a little bit to investigations in general. In recent times, when you've been at a particular venue, there is something else I'm going to ask you, but I want to ask you this first. Have you ever felt that you go into a place and you clearly, from walking through the front door, that you are not welcome?
There's been a few of them. Again, it's one of those difficult things to kind of understand, because I'm always torn in my mind of, am I actually unwelcome here because of something in the building, or is it the way the building looks that's making me feel that way? But I've certainly been to plenty of places that, weirdly, considering we didn't get a huge amount of activity there, the Ancient Round Inn was one place that I walked in and thought, this has got a really unwelcoming atmosphere about it. But then in hindsight, I think it's probably the way that building looks, and we didn't get any real evidence there to back up that feeling. But then we've been to other places that actually are quite mundane to look at, and there is that feeling there. So it's very difficult to distinguish what the cause of that feeling is, but it certainly is a thing when you walk into a place. And I think every place has a personality as well, whether that is a tangible thing or not. But I certainly think every place is its own being almost.
So the Ram Inn, is quite a well-known establishment. There's been a lot of individuals that are, what I would say, YouTubers or investigators that create YouTube content, and also people that write books. And they've, it's been investigated by many people, and even to the level of Most Haunted and all the TV shows, and people have been there. And everybody gives you this kind of impression, oh yes, it's full of demons and all the crazy stuff there. And you didn't really have much go on when you went there, and were you kind of a little bit let down?
I'm not let down. I'm never let down by any investigation. I think they're all worthwhile. Even if you don't get anything, it's still worth a go. And you can then come away from a place and say, well, we didn't get anything there. Does that imply that it's not really as haunted as people say it is? So you still get something from a place, even if you don't have anything happen. But I think we were at the Ram. It must have been for about 12 hours because we stayed overnight there. And you watch the episode we done on it, and it looks like we actually had a lot of activity, but that was over the span of 12 hours, and we didn't get anything massive happen throughout that whole time. It was, again, little bits and pieces. If a place like that was infested with demons, where were they? That's the question I've always got, because there was nothing particularly negative that happened there. As I say, there were a few unusual things that happened whilst we were investigating, but nothing that was inherently bad or evil feeling or anything like that. And I think that's the same with a lot of places. I think either because of the history of a place, or just a place gains a reputation over a period of years. And it's how you deal with that reputation, whether you go into a place and say, I don't know, you hear footsteps and an EVP or something like that, something quite low level. Do you then come out of there and say, well, there was a demon stalking us and we could hear it whispering before it was pouncing? Or do you just say, sounded like there was someone walking and we heard a voice? So it's how you interpret the results you get as well. And I think that's a trap a lot of people fall into. They have things happen, but then instead of calling them what they are, they sort of get built up a little bit, and that contributes to the legends of places.
Have you ever had it been scratched, or have you ever felt when you've gone on an investigation, when you've come home, that maybe you've brought something back with you?
I mean, we've been touched before. We've had sort of stuff grab us. Feels like fingers around your arm or on your shoulder. Sophie had a scratch on her arm at a churchyard. This is going back a long time, probably about 10 years, I should imagine. But in terms of things following us home, it's never, ever happened. I know there's people that say they have been to a haunted place and something's followed them back. I don't know how much to believe into that. I mean, like I say, I've been doing it for nearly 14 years and nothing's followed me anywhere. It could be I'm not particularly interested to follow, but personally, I believe that hauntings are location-based. I think whatever's there is a feature of the environment. rather than something sort of an ethereal being that can follow you around. But that, again, I can't prove that in any way. That's just a belief, and from my experience, what I've observed. But no, nothing has followed us as far as I'm aware.
But are you either on the fence, or are you more like what you're experiencing is a replay? It's something that's encoded in the building, something that's emotionally imprinted, and that it's not aware. It's just something that you're experiencing, like a playback. Or do you think that there is possibility that it is intelligent and it's trying to convey some sort of message? Where do you kind of, on that kind of scale, where do you sort of find yourself?
I'm kind of with both. We've certainly had things happen that don't seem to be aware of us or any form of consciousness. They just seem to be events that will happen. And then there are things that we believe we've had some sort of interaction with or a level of communication with, which would imply that there's a form of intelligence there. But again, it's the thing I find interesting with investigating hauntings and ghosts is that we're really not any further understanding this than we were 100 years ago. There's been no advance, sort of the understanding it for 100 years. So again, it is still just on belief and what and people's own experiences is to make these. The stone tape idea and like a recording in a building or an environment, I certainly subscribe to that idea. But then, as I say, there's been moments where it seems like there's a form of intelligence as well, which would kind of go against the grain with that, unless there is sort of some very basic intelligence that can be preserved or stored in a building. I don't know is the honest answer. In the years that go by I do this for, it sort of gets more confusing, and I always question myself, what do I actually believe? And the truth is I don't actually know what I believe.
So as the years have passed and as the years have gone on, have you found yourself becoming more reliant on technology or less reliant? Because, I mean, AI is growing and AI is starting to embed itself in all aspects of our daily lives. And I've noticed that, even in the ghost hunting genre, you're seeing AI pop up now. And technology is a good thing. As long as it's used in the right way, it can be a massive help and it can save a lot of time. Are you kind of embracing technology, or are you kind of keeping it at arm's length?
I think embrace it, but use it in the correct manner. I mean, we've basically used the same equipment from when we started. We use cameras. We use a couple of measuring equipments for the environment, as in like temperature, electromagnetic fields, things like that. So very sort of basic, just monitoring equipment. We've got a few other bits, like we've got a thermal imaging camera now. Again, a lot of that isn't needed, in my opinion, when you're looking at investigating places, because you can take all of these readings, and we have done this in the past. We've sort of monitored certain sites and we've taken readings throughout the evening, and we've not seen any correlations between places. It's almost like every place, as I said earlier, is its own personality. Each place, the haunting seems to act differently. So like I say, we just spend a period of time trying to monitor the environment, use technology to help us with that. But we've found that I think the thing is just sit in a place and see what happens. Technology is great. It gives you the ability to obviously record and see things that you can't with your own eyes and ears. But again, there is that thing of becoming over-reliant on it. And I suppose as well, it depends on the reason why people are investigating. Are they doing it for their own amusement and their own, peace of mind, going to places because they enjoy it, or are they going there to try and prove something? And if you're going to prove it, I would say the more technology, the better, because you can take measurements constantly of an environment and see if there's any changes when activity happens. But if you're going there for your own satisfaction, it's probably not as necessary.
What's this encounter you had with an apparent poltergeist in a Cold War bunker?
Oh, goodness. Yeah, that was, Kelford and Hatch nuclear bunker. This was, that's probably about 5 years ago we investigated there. That was a really weird place. It's a bit of background on it. It was obviously dug out in the 50s during the Cold War. anticipation was that would be in the event of a nuclear attack, where all the sort of government would go down, essentially entombed alive. And I think they had, it might have been 6 months supply, water, food, and everything to survive down there. Obviously, there never was a nuclear attack in Britain, so it was never used. And that's the fascinating thing with it. That place was never used for its intended purpose. So it's always been empty. It's never been lived in. It's an empty shell, but it's supposed to be haunted, which is another thing where it does make you think maybe it's not always about the history of a place that makes it haunted. Maybe there is another factor we're not looking into at the moment. Yeah, the poltergeist in the cellar. I think there's 3 stories of it. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head how deep it goes, but there's 3 stories underground. And right in the base level, we had a camera set up with an infrared light just set up in the room. We were down out in the stairway, which is, I don't know, probably about 50 yards away from where this camera was set up. All of a sudden, we heard massive crash in the room. Went in there, and the infrared light had been thrown across the floor. It was actually on a shelf, and the shelf was slanted backwards, and it had come off the shelf. And not only it wasn't like it had just fallen onto the floor. It was about 6-7 foot away. So it was a heavy bit of equipment as well. And we had it on camera as well. You can see absolute silence in there, and all of a sudden the light just flies across.
If you're catching stuff like that, what was your reaction? How did you deal with that?
Well, again, first thing we did was we stood it back up where it was. We jumped around in the room. I mean, we weren't in the room at the time, but we jumped around just to see if it could have been any kind of vibration from somewhere. There was no way that was moving off. It really threw us. But again, it was one of those things. It happened, and there was nothing that preceded it and nothing that came after it. It was just that one weird event. And it did shake us up a bit because it was so loud when when it fell off. But it's just one of those where you just think, how could that happen?
So what were the stories about the poltergeist then? What were the stories that led you to investigate it?
Well, the thing was, we weren't aware about a poltergeist in the ground level. Sorry, the base level. We'd never heard of that. I only heard about a poltergeist being there about 3 years later. I read an article or a piece on a website about it, and it said about a poltergeist down there. I wasn't even aware that a poltergeist was supposed to be there. It was more so we'd heard stories of like shadow figures going about there. That would seem to be the main sighting in the bunker, and we recorded one as well. So it was nice that we were able to sort of tie up that report and actually experience it ourselves as well and document it. But yeah, there was it was mostly the shadow figures. Off the top of my head, I think there was sort of sound of footsteps, things like that in there as well. So it was known to be haunted. And there was a story about when it was being built, apparently one of the builders fell into the cement and was never seen again. And he's just his hat floating on top of the cement. I think it's transpired in, recent years. That's probably a bit of an urban legend, probably nothing actually historically to that. But again, it is one of those things that adds to the mystique of the place, definitely.
It's interesting that it's a building that was built for a purpose and it was never used for that purpose. So it never had any large amount of people living there. It might have been, it might have had a skeleton crew that were looking after it, but it never had any sort of real emotional imprint. And yet people have experienced weirdness. And that's not the only place. There are lots of other bunkers around England that were built around the same time and everything, and they were never really used for purpose, and yet people have experienced other phenomenon in them. And it does make you, like you said, it does make you think maybe it's more of a people factor or a human factor rather than something that's there or something that's living there in as in the ghost of grandma or whatever. Maybe that's something that us as individuals are bringing with us. Moving on a little bit, because I want to pick your brains about this, because I remember you did an update video and you told a little bit of a story about some footsteps that you experienced when you were at a church. Was it a derelict church on your own?
Yeah, it was. This again going back a few years now. Alresford Church in Essex. It was burned down in the 1970s, so it's just the ruins there now. No roof or anything. It's pretty much just the stone walls of it. I was there at dusk one evening, just waiting for it to get a bit darker, standing around and sort of getting my equipment out, and I heard the sound of footsteps walking towards me. Now, there's a gravel car park just outside, and I thought, oh, there's probably someone come out walking a dog, or maybe it's just someone coming to check, what I'm doing there. So I listened. Footsteps walked through, and then I turned around and I heard the footsteps walk into the church, and I could track them with my eyes where these were coming from. And they walked through the church and out the other side, and they just stopped. And it was one of those that it happened so fast, and it was one of those where you just stand there and think, did I really just hear that? Because you can't comprehend that something like that could happen, especially when you could see where they're walking in. Like I say, it was dusk as well. If there was, I don't know, say someone had walked the other side of the wall or something, you'd expect to see a torchlight or something. It was that kind of dark. It was the fact they just stopped as well, stopped dead. And the interesting thing as well was they just seemed to be walking on the same surface. Obviously, back in the day, the church would have had either a stone floor or a wooden floor. It's just grass now. But the sound didn't change when it walked from out in the car park. So when it was on grass, it was just the sound of footsteps. So really weird.
So was it like the sound of shoes or boots or on gravel?
So yeah, it wasn't on gravel because I heard them coming from the car park initially, and I'm trying. And again, it was quite some time ago, but I don't distinctly remember it being on gravel when it was in the car park, even though the car park is gravel. I just remember it being footsteps, and because I didn't really think anything of it at the time, it wasn't until I thought, "Oh, they're walking in here," that I actually took any real notice of it. By which time, yeah, I'd have said it was either boots or shoes. And it was just walking. It was I can't do the sound of it, but it certainly wasn't on a hard surface like wood or stone, which makes me think the closest probably would have been on the grass, which was there obviously was grass inside the church. Which again means whatever it was must have had some kind of weight to it. But yeah, I could not see anything.
There's a story of Chingle Hall, and they're an overnight vigil, and two individuals were sat in one of the main rooms upstairs, and they heard these boots, very heavy boots, coming up the stairs, and they heard it come down the hallway. These like riding boots. They could hear the spurs clanking. That they wear on the boots for riding horses, and they heard the footsteps come into the hallway, and then they heard the footsteps come into the bedroom that they were doing their vigil in the dark. The footsteps came into the room, walked towards them, then turned towards the window, and then turned around and went. I think they went back out again. And it was as if there was a person there, but they saw nothing. They saw no person or anything like that. They just heard the sound. And the interesting thing was that and they had carpet on the floor, but they heard the sound as if the shoes were walking on a hard wooden floor, as it would have been, a few hundred years ago. And I think things like that are fascinating. It's kind of like maybe a replay, and it's interesting that your experience when you heard that is you didn't hear it on. Obviously, it would have been stone. It would have been a stone floor in a church in the olden days when it was a church, and you would have thought that the sound would have been of feet on a stone floor. But yeah, that's totally fascinating. When you did you experience anything? Did it go sudden? Did it go very quiet? Did the birds stop cheeping? Did any environmental change, or was it just you heard a sound?
Yeah, not that I remember. And again, it started off completely unremarkable. I just thought, there's someone walking a dog through here, and you just don't think anything of it like that. It wasn't until I turned around to be greeted by the person walking said dog, and nobody there, but the footsteps continued through. There was no nothing to accompany it, no kind of chill, no temperature fluctuation, the wind didn't get up or drop down, completely normal. It was just that. And as I say, it got to the other side of the church and just stopped. And that was it.
Before we end out this episode, I want to quickly get an idea of what your trajectory is, because I know that you regularly post stuff on your YouTube channel, which will be, for anyone listening, the link will be in the show notes, and I suggest you go and check out some of Luke's and Shadow Paranormal's investigations, because if you like investigations that are to the point, and you go to a location, there's an investigation, and here's the evidence, then if you like stuff like that, then these are you guys. No, there's no crazy running around and it's got my arm and I just fell over, I'm possessed. There's none of that. It's proper, what I like, old school investigating. But anyway, I wanted to get onto the YouTube side of things. What's your plan for YouTube? Are you just going to continue just making videos, or have you got some some really special places coming up in the future?
Starting October, we've got a few sort of feature length films we've been working on. We've got one about stone circles and ancient sacred sites that we've investigated. Weirdly, has a UFO sighting at one of those. So it's slightly different to what we've done before. And then we've got another one coming out looking at Ouija boards, which I know is sort of a hotly contested subject within the paranormal. But we've got a couple of those this year. And then next year, we're looking at having a video out every fortnight, just an episode out every fortnight, which is what we've been filming this year primarily. So, yeah, we've got plenty to come. Again, very much the same as how we've done things, over the last few years. Just keeping going, and it's we like how we do things. Obviously, willing to learn and always room for improvement. But if it ain't broken, don't fix it.
Well, yeah, true, very true. But anyway, Luke. So, final thoughts. Have you got any website or anything that you want to sort of put forward?
Yeah, I mean, YouTube's where we're based mainly. That's our main home. But yeah, we're on all the other social medias, Facebook, dare I say it, TikTok, and Instagram as well. So yeah, it'll be, our name is Shadow Paranormal on all of those. So drop us a follow. Awesome.
Well, all the links will be in the show notes, so I'm sure that anybody wants to check you out, there'll be links down there for them to get to you. And thanks to everybody for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I certainly did. It was nice to catch up with Luke, and I'm not going to leave it as long next time because he is a busy guy, and getting him for an hour or so is nice now and again. Anyway, thanks very much for listening. Thanks again, Luke. Until next time, talk to you soon.